their children to get meat and bread. There are so many dehumanizing elements in the welfare system that we are concerned about removing. Ultimately, we are concerned about a guaranteed annual income. And the other thing I think is very necessary to say is that everybody's on welfare in this country. And when it comes to black people and poor people, we just call it something else. When it's white people and rich, we call it subsidies.
It's no secret, fatherless households are more common in the black community. A survey from the American Consensus Institution revealed that 67% of black children under 18 in the U.S. live in homes without fathers. This is a stark contrast to white children, as only 24% of them live in fatherless homes. But it wasn't always like that. The black families survived generations of open racism, widespread poverty, and slavery. They lived through segregation and violence, and strong family bonds used to be the norm.
As of 1960, 2/3 of all black American children were living with both parents. That declined over the years until only 1/3 were living with both parents in 1995. So it's not the legacy of slavery that destroys the African American family.
It's the legacy of the welfare state.
Between 1890 and 1950, the marriage rate was much higher among black women than white women. A fraction of black children lived in homes without their fathers. But everything changed with the expansion of the welfare state. It divided the household and created a dependency on welfare. This kind of reminds me of what President Reagan said.
I've always felt the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
So, what happened? What's the mechanism? Here is a detailed look at how the welfare state played a role in the dissolving of the family structure over the years. People say that the breakdown of traditional family units, family structures, is a byproduct of black poverty, not just because there is no man to support the family financially, but also because women tend to earn less than men on average. Of course, the connection between the two is there, but it goes deeper than that. Welfare was a mean little business. It was designed to get people by in a pinch. Public assistance programs, like welfare entitlements, have been a part of American culture since the 1940s. Unfortunately, like in many other aspects of government institutions, black Americans were left out. In time, black people could also get financial support, but it wasn't easy. Mothers who applied for checks had to let social workers inspect their homes to see if their conditions were suitable for welfare. These workers also had to make sure no man was living in the house. But even if they qualified for support, the amount they received was meager and not enough to build a stable life. In the early 1960s, welfare was not yet common, even in the most impoverished black communities. In the decade that followed, the number of black people on welfare went up by 169%. They further increased by 30% from 1970 to 1975. In 1972, New York City, almost 1 out of every 6 residents was on welfare. A major portion of these households were black. Although black people were only around 1/10 of all Americans, they made up almost 50% of all welfare recipients by the late 70s. A recent UNICEF report showed that many children under 18 in America struggle financially, and African American children are nearly 4 times more likely to be in poverty than white children. Though the number of families receiving cash assistance has decreased since 1996, child poverty rates for black children in the U.S. remain high. This outcome is not by accident. I studied the evolution of social welfare policies in the U.S. from the New Deal to the 1996 reforms, and found that these policies have been discriminatory from the start. And a lot of people can confess to that. This led many black families to fall into cultural and economic ruin. In a short period, healthy black people started relying on government assistance to achieve some level of normalcy. But within the city slums, that normalcy was impossible to get. Black children barely knew their fathers, and most were raised by unemployed and unmarried mothers stuck in
497, 498.
Stuck in a cycle of poverty and modest paychecks. This marked a significant shift in black American history. The consequences were severe for the next generation. Let's start with the Social Security Act of 1935. It was introduced during Franklin Roosevelt's administration. It was designed to create the safety net in the country, safeguarding families from losing their income. It was viewed as a significant part of New Deal reform and paved the way for federal protections in the future, such as the Affordable Care Act and Medicare. This policy had 2 main parts. The first part had social insurance programs that provided financial support to dependents of deceased or incapacitated workers and Social Security for retired older Americans. The second part comprised means-tested public assistance programs, initially known as Aid to Dependent Children, and later renamed Aid to Families with Dependent Children. In 1962, under the Kennedy administration, ideally, it was believed that as the overall quality of life in the country improved, more families could support themselves without needing financial assistance from the ADC program. Eventually, the ADC program would become unnecessary and gradually phase out on its own. But this posed a major problem for Black Americans. Like any other component of the New Deal, the origins of the Social Security Act were deeply rooted in racism. During the 1930s and 1940s, Black people had to deal with widespread racial discrimination in the workplace. They held low-paying jobs, often paid in cash and off the books. This made them ineligible for social insurance programs. The ADC program was an extension of state-run programs that supported widowed mothers, but mostly benefited white widows. The states decided eligibility and need, and since the separate but equal doctrine was in place, blacks were still excluded from fully participating. Jim Crow laws and the separate but equal doctrine led to a system with different services for whites and blacks. But, as we all know by now, they were far from equal. States made efforts to cut down ADC enrollment and costs. They proposed residency requirements to prevent blacks from the South from qualifying for the program. In 1935, there was a hearing on the bill, and the NAACP, an organization that fights for civil rights, expressed their concerns. Southern politicians wanted to exclude agricultural and domestic workers from the bill. This meant that many black workers couldn't get the support they needed. This exclusion would particularly affect black sharecroppers and cash tenants, who were already struggling to make ends meet. Even though the NAACP was highly against it, the Social Security Act was approved. That's why 65% of African Americans nationwide were not eligible for benefits, and an even larger percentage of these black families in the South were excluded from the program. In the 1950s and 60s, things got even worse for black families. Welfare checks incentivized single-mother households. And there was one rule that ruined it all. The man-in-the-house rule. Black families have long been the victims of income inequality and bad government policies. The irony, of course, is that conservatives pushed black mothers to break their families to get welfare. Before 1968, many states and administrative agencies created and enforced the man-in-the-house rule. This rule basically meant that if there is a working or healthy man in the house, the government can't help you. And they would go as far as to send welfare workers to visit the homes without warning, to check if a man was present. If they found any evidence whatsoever, families lost their welfare benefits. Over the years, the welfare state started dissolving the family structure, slowly but surely. A man who can't get a decent job and provide a substantial income suddenly believes that his family is better off without him. So, if a man were to lose his job, he literally had to leave the house so his children could get government surplus peanut butter, beans, and cheese. On the other hand, if either the woman or the man, or both, were irresponsible, they faced no consequences for their actions. And it was the taxpayers who ended up paying for it. These things aren't exactly designed to keep the marriage intact. They are meant to divide people. The harm done to the children was massive. Many children experienced the hurt from broken families at such a young age. In 1960, just 33% of black American children didn't live with two parents, but by 1988, that rate went up to 61%. In that time, the proportion of black children born to single mothers rose from 23% to more than 60%. This is exactly why we can't judge government policies based on their ideals, but based on their results. And these results, well, left a ton of households fatherless. I mean, think about it. What would the result have been if this welfare policy had required the opposite of that both parents live in the same home and care for their children to receive government assistance? The welfare state did what slavery couldn't do. It broke families apart. And broken families fuel poverty. The structure of the family can influence the choices children make. For example, boys raised without their fathers are more likely to drop out of school, get violence, use drugs, or go to jail. Girls are more likely to have a child out of wedlock or engage in sexual activities at a very early age. These children are also more prone to mental health problems, which can affect them as adults. A psychology test detailed in Roy Baumeister and John Tierney's book, Willpower, showed that children from fatherless households were more likely to settle for a small prize straight away. In contrast, children with fathers present were more willing to wait for a bigger prize. Experts from the Northwestern Institute for Policy Research challenged that these effects are primarily due to dangerous neighborhoods or poor schools. They found that the direct effect of family structure itself played a more significant role. As marriage rates declined among the poor and working class in the U.S., the institution of marriage has remained strong among the wealthier population, with similar rates to those from 50 years ago. At the same time, the decrease in marriage among the working class has led to a significant rise in out-of-wedlock births, often to couples who are living together without being married. This happens because people view marriage as an ideal situation, but feel it is unachievable, yet they still want to have children. In the mid-1980s, the rates of fatherless households dramatically increased. Today, just 44% of black children live with their fathers. Also, a lot more black children are born outside of marriage. The rates of such cases went up from 24.5% in 1964 to 70.7% by 1994, which remains at a similar level today. Many people blame the expansion of welfare programs for the breakdown of black families. Since 1935, people have had access to cash welfare, but this welfare was quite modest and not enough to cover any of the living expenses. With Johnson's Great Society, which began in 1964, welfare benefits became much more generous and controlled. When I mean controlled, I mean crazy. The man in the house rule discouraged marriage because it provided welfare assistance to mothers if no man was living in the house. If a mother married an employed man, even one earning the minimum wage, it jeopardized her financial support. These benefits were huge. The Great Society programs offered a way out for low-income black families. This could be why, in 1964, only 7% of American children were born out of wedlock, compared to the current rate of 40%. So, basically, the government urged mothers to keep fathers out of the home and paid them well for doing so. Shifts in the labor market and deindustrialization greatly impacted job opportunities, especially for low-skilled workers. It hurt both whites and black people, but black communities were the most affected. Here's an example. Imagine a city like Detroit, where the manufacturing industry was the top employer, and many black men held manufacturing jobs. Here, in the 1970s, 56% of black men were in the manufacturing industry, but by 2000, it dropped to 26%. Over the years, technological advancements and economic shifts created a demand for skilled workers in other sectors, like healthcare or technology. These new jobs required a higher level of education and specialized skills. The problem was the lower level of education among black men on average. As jobs increasingly required education beyond high school, black men faced many challenges. This made it harder for them to adapt to the changing job market and find new employment in other industries. White men were better equipped to handle the changing job market. They had higher education and a greater chance of securing well-paid jobs in emerging industries. Then there was the 90s gear change. In the late 1990s, efforts to reform the AFD.
Everyone can see President Biden's inflation problem, but Biden's denying reality.
The prices continue.
Towards racism. Critics claim that the program encouraged out-of-wedlock births, irresponsible fatherhood, and dependency across generations. During this time, there was a lot of public concern about the cost of welfare programs. Some people believed that the programs contributed to rising taxes and national debt. It tapped into public fears and created a seriously negative perception of people who received welfare. There were a lot of misconceptions and stereotypes about those who lived in poverty. So, the reform bill that was eventually passed replaced the AFDC with TANF, Temporary Assistance to Needy Families. The new bill imposed stricter work requirements, expecting single mothers to find work within 2 years of receiving benefits. There was also a 5-year limit on receiving benefits. To promote traditional family values, teenage mothers didn't receive benefits. But that was not all. If a father were to fall behind on child support payments, they could face threats of imprisonment. The bill restricted the use of federally funded TANF for certain groups of immigrants. There were also eligibility limitations on Medicaid, food stamps, and supplementary
Under Bill
Social
Clinton,
Security,
y'all see this?
SSI. These measures were
The same
just too
person
harsh.
who's
They made it
capping
difficult
with
for
Joe
families in need
Biden
to get
and
proper
Obama.
financial support. Instead of addressing
Under the
their root
Democrat
poverty
program.
and creating new employment opportunities, it just punished those who already struggled financially. Well, today, modern problems require new solutions. According to Forbes, the economic status of black Americans is still far behind compared to white people in terms of stock ownership, net worth, income, home ownership, and other metrics. In the United States,
This is
black
what we
workers
see
earn
now,
about
y'all,
30%
under the
less than white
Democratic
workers.
Party.
Almost 50%
Especially
of
the
black
Biden
workers are working in
policies.
retail, food services,
You see it
healthcare,
all
and
over again.
accommodation, and a huge chunk of these workers
So I'm here to
are doing
remind
lower
y'all.
paying services. Imagine getting paid more than 40% less than white men for doing the exact same job. If you are a black woman in the US, this is more likely to happen. In 2020, black women earned around 58% of what white men earned on average. Similar to Latinas and Native women, black women face a much more significant pay gap compared to all women. This is because they face both racism and sexism in the workplace. Today, the Social Security program is a backbone for many black families. It protects them through disability, retirement, or death. The program is crucial because African Americans often lack financial resources and have higher disability rates. The program is meant to help those who earn low income get benefits. Those who heavily rely on Social Security are older black people with lower lifetime earnings and fewer pension benefits. For example, in 2017, 35% of married and 58% of unmarried older black people received 90% or more of their income from Social Security. Despite its importance, black Americans still benefit less overall from the program because of the ongoing pay disparities and shorter life expectancies. These factors result in lower lifetime earnings and, in turn, reduce the total benefits received from Social Security. In 2005, President George W. Bush wanted to make some changes and planned to privatize the program. But the NAACP responded with a nationwide campaign called SOS, Save Our Social Security, and partnered with the Congressional Black to keep the program safe. It worked. Social Security is still an important support system for countless families. Unfortunately, our country has made very few efforts to reduce the disparities in wealth and income between black and white households. Despite laws against pay discrimination, black men earn 83 cents and black women earn 62 cents for every dollar earned by white men. Also, practices like redlining or housing discrimination have made it nearly impossible or much less profitable for black families to own homes. These structural barriers create fewer opportunities for black people to accumulate wealth and save for retirement. When the pandemic hit, Social Security became even more critical. Many black adults lost jobs, and many small businesses were forced to close. The coronavirus made it very difficult to keep up with mortgage or rental payments. The thing is, today, more black Americans are more likely to enter a church, to go to a funeral, than to celebrate a wedding. Fatherless homes, declining marriage rates, and high divorce rates are challenging the black community to the core. Imagine as a young child living in poverty with a single mother in a poor and drug-infested neighborhood. Over the years, you would have witnessed how this would impact your chances of success, like finishing high school and getting a good job. Because of this, many black children are raised with little expectations or a sense of hope. Now, some might argue that it takes a village to raise a kid, but in reality, the urban public housing village is drenched in toxic influences like violence, drugs, and bad role models. And in that village, fatherless boys are left alone to figure out what it takes to be a man. So, where do they look? To one another. And in many cases, they turn to gangs and the streets. Girls' lives, too, are deeply damaged in fatherless households. Without a father figure, young girls can experience psychological and emotional challenges. They can have lower self-esteem and struggle to form healthy relationships with men. Teen pregnancy is a common problem. They can also struggle with economic hardships and poor academic performance. For things to change, we need to acknowledge that the absence of black men is damaging countless households. To fill this void, it is essential to reunite fathers with their children, but also to teach the younger generation the value of family structures. But this is something that will take time and a lot of effort. All in all, the U.S. welfare system is a clear reflection of its economic policies and the nation's long history of racism. From the very beginning, the policy excluded black Americans who were already struggling financially. The man in the house rule only made things worse, which greatly impacted black households. The expansion of welfare led to a decrease in fathers' involvement in raising their children, leaving mothers to struggle alone in jobless poverty. This created a new reality for poor blacks, where work became optional, fathers were rare, and dysfunction became common. The lack of family loyalty and work ethic led to a new oppositional racial outlook among young black males who often resorted to crime. Now, years later, the impact of the rule can still be felt. A lot of black children have grown up without a father, and they can easily go astray. The situation is hard for overworked and exhausted single mothers. The more children they had, the harder it was to get a job. I just want to point out the brutal reality that led to such circumstances. The welfare culture discouraged individual responsibility. It pushed people to make hard choices, which damaged their families and put everyone involved in challenging positions. This is a reality that many now have to live with. If you enjoyed this documentary, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. We aren't just telling stories, we're changing lives and waking the culture up. The video on the screen shares why they are banning black history in schools. Click on it now to watch. It will change your perspective on our history.
We're going to take it to another video. We're going to go to another video, y'all. That's a branch off of this one. The major problem in the black community, but it extended from how the U.S. government destroyed black families. Alright? So now we're going to dip into this video.
At the Ram Make This the Summer event, you can take a vacation from payments
on the most awarded light and
It creates a ripple effect and significantly.
Part 2. To this video, who destroyed America, y'all? The Dixiecrats, under their policies, destroyed Black America to this day. Look at the Biden administration destroying Black America.
The baby mama culture is so glamorized right now. The baby mama culture is so glamorized right now, especially if you can be with anyone from the hip-hop industry. Many young women see it as a status symbol. People glamorize money so much that it has influenced an entire generation. They are proud to have their children by someone who is literally impregnating every woman they sleep with, without any remorse or considering the consequences. Countless single mothers in the Black community treat it like a rite of passage, then wear it like some kind of badge of honor. Don't get me wrong. The point of this video is not to degrade or insult single mothers. There are a lot of successful Black women out there who own businesses and make their own money. There are also those who've left their partners for solid reasons. They've done everything they possibly can to give their kids a good life, and I respect that. We are here to talk about the toxic aspects of the baby mama culture in hip-hop and the entertainment industry, the impact it can have on the kids and the entire community. For an average woman, being a single mom is absolutely exhausting. Now pair that with toxicity, narcissism, and blatant disrespect from their partners. This is real. This is a fact. It is happening all around us. Recently, there are more and more people who prefer to have children first instead of getting married, particularly in the rap industry. You see, men are considered gods for sleeping with multiple women, but very few actually stop to think about what this is doing to their children. There are already so many fatherless homes in the Black community. The hip-hop and entertainment industry is only making it worse. In every social media post you see, or every music video you watch, you can see just how popular the baby mama culture has become. But this is causing multi-generational trauma and a lot of suffering. Women drop out of their own lives to raise these kids, and in most of these cases, the man doesn't respect the woman or any of their baby mamas. The children then copy their behavior, and the cycle continues. People forget that children need emotional support, not just money. They need love and affection. They want their fathers to be there. Yes, they may be a child of a famous rapper, so they can buy whatever they want. But what happens when the father can no longer support them? What happens when that father has been absent from their lives the whole time? Take DMX, for example.
Dad! What you heard is what you hearing.
He was a record-breaking rapper with some of the best hits in the late 90s and early 2000s. At the height of his career, he sold more than 74 million records. He was worth millions of dollars and lived life however he wanted, but all that luxury and wealth was short-lived. In 2013, he filed for bankruptcy. He said the number one reason he ended up in so much debt was because he had to pay for all his children. Every single one of his baby mamas relied on the star for financial support. It got so bad that on July 14, 2015, the rapper was sentenced to 6 months in jail because he couldn't pay $400,000 in child support. DMX had a history of crime in Erie County, including traffic violations and failure to pay child support. Then, in 2021, DMX had a serious heart attack, which was caused by cocaine overdose. He spent a week in a vegetative state until the family decided to take him off life support. The man died with millions in debt, no will, and 15 children. During a talk show, DMX sat down with one of his sons, Xavier. Xavier asked DMX for a healthy relationship, but the only way for it to work was for DMX to stop using drugs for good. Then DMX got defensive and shifted the blame onto his son. He said that even though he only had unconditional love for his son, he wasn't going to change himself for anyone. It is so sad and heartbreaking that DMX died shortly after. After his death, his entire family started fighting to take control of his estate. It was like a free-for-all. Everyone is trying to get as much out of it as they can. But it is not only the men who prefer having children outside of wedlock. A lot of women in the music industry choose to do it as well. Sexy Red is a perfect example. She is ratchet and she knows it, plays into it, and uses it to her advantage. Whether people like it or not, her music is making a ton of money. This is her in the hospital giving birth to her second baby. And in the room, she was playing My Baby Daddy. If you are not familiar with the situation, Sexy Red tried to hide the pregnancy in the first few months. Her career was doing pretty well, and she was on tour with Drake and tried her best to keep the pregnancy a secret. She was trying.
This is not just a movie. It is an event. Horizon, an American saga.
The all-new GoDaddy Arrow helps you get your business online in minutes with the power of AI. With the perfect name,
pretty well, and she was on tour with Drake and tried her best to keep the pregnancy a secret. She was trying to suck her stomach in and wear clothes that wouldn't show. She was also pregnant on the Money Bag tour and nobody knew. But she couldn't hide it forever. She officially announced her pregnancy in October, but tried to keep the name of her baby daddy out of the tabloids. When it was finally time to give birth, she made a whole scene on Instagram posting a bunch of provocative pictures and videos for fans. The comments were divided. Some applauded her for still being who she is. They congratulated her for giving birth. Others said that her behavior was outrageous and embarrassing. She was doing too much to get attention, and this has sparked a lot of controversy. Sometime later, Sexy Red finally decided to show her baby daddy and posted some photos of the two of them together, but then deleted the post. So people started speculating that they broke up, but nothing is clear so far. A lot of young people are looking up to these artists and celebrities. They want to be just like them, and because we see this all over social media, it has become a serious problem, especially for the average family. This type of lifestyle is reinforcing negative stereotypes about black people in general, about black fathers being absent, irresponsible, and completely disengaged from the children's lives. Then black women are seen as bitter and angry, like they don't know how to choose a partner. But when we see so many children growing up in broken families, we can see a pattern there, one with the potential to have serious consequences. In many of these cases, the children are left broken and bound to repeat the same mistakes. Now, sprinkle in some poverty, bad education, guns, violence, and voila, you get a recipe for disaster. This causes a further decline in the nuclear black family. At one point, people thought it would be a good idea to make these things into a reality show. Shawty Lowe from D4L made headlines in the early 2000s. He had 11 kids with 10 different women. He started working on a TV show called All My Baby's Mamas. The show would have existed at a time when not many TV shows had all black casts. There weren't many images of black people on TV. It was a perfect storm for controversies about cultural representation and pathologies. Something like this could have caused irreparable damage to the perception of black families. Before the show was supposed to air, a national petition was launched about the stereotypical portrayal of black families and glamorizing sex before marriage and sleeping with many different partners. As the backlash got bigger and bigger, boycotts and protests followed. This is why the show was canceled before it even had a chance to release a single episode. Unfortunately, in 2016, Shawty Lowe passed in a deadly car crash. Fellow rappers and fans came to pay their respects. Now, let's talk more about the effects of an absent father. As single-parent households have become more and more common, the fixation on family structure has disintegrated. More than half of young black Americans are being raised by a single parent, mostly their mother. Because they don't have a role model or a consistent father figure in their lives, these children are bound to look for that missing piece in their future romantic partner. Children raised without a father are more likely to drop out of school, turn to drugs and alcohol, and develop mental health problems. There are a bunch of studies to back this up. When these kids grow up, they are more likely to end up in bad and toxic relationships. Many of these children stay stuck in a cycle of poverty, have a child out of wedlock, or end up behind bars. Just look at the statistics. 90% of runaway children have an absent father. 71% of high school dropouts have an absent father. 85% of youth in prison have an absent father. 85% of children with absent fathers have behavioral disorders. The list goes on and on. On top of that, 84% of black women are the breadwinners and sole caregivers in the home. So if you do the math, an average baby mama is not taken care of like Cardi B or any other celebrity. Most of the time, she has to work 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet. This is a serious cultural issue in our community. It creates a ripple effect and significantly downplays the benefits of a nuclear family and marriage. Is this the future we want for the entire black community? Shouldn't we be protecting our own and working together to create a better world for our children? Why do we allow rich people and influencers to be the standard? They are supposed to influence us and make us feel good, right? We see them being rich, buying fancy cars, Birkin bags, huge mansions, and going on these expensive vacations. It went from them influencing us to make us feel better, but in reality, they make us feel worthless. Whenever you see someone in their 20s living the life and getting paid a ton of money, while you go back to your minimum wage job, you end up seeing yourself as a failure. The problem with these modern day women and men is that they try to influence us with things that are unattainable. In a sense, like, you gotta have this and you are set for life. If you make a baby with a rapper, then he is stuck with you forever. He will pay for everything. These people are constantly spreading mindless consumerism. They will do anything for money, even create a fake lifestyle. But many of these so-called influencers are masters of illusion. They create the perfect image of someone who lives a good life. This creates completely unrealistic expectations for their followers. Now think about what this is doing to the younger generation, especially Gen Alpha. Young people are dedicating a lot of time to watching these types of people. It's tiny things that can create big impacts. Even if these influencers and celebrities have a messy life, the people watching them will still see them as fun. They will still remain hooked to them. It's the drama that creates this superficial charm and keeps the younger generation drawn to the thought that being rich and famous will make them happy. But in reality, many of these people end up raising their children in toxic relationships, which only makes it a million times harder for their kids. Of course, I'm not saying that everyone who hooks up with a rapper is there to secure money from him. It is obvious that things like these are highly prevalent. Take Slim Danger, for example. She has been on the hunt for rappers for a while now. She slept with Lil Durk and Lil Baby, among others. She is also the mother of Chief Keef's son. But in a recent podcast, she even admitted that she was getting pregnant just for money. She said she was trying to have a kid with Chief Keef so that she could have an easy life.
I didn't get pregnant yet. So I'm going to try again. I got to try again. This dick good. So
then she goes on to insult Chief Keef for not doing anything for his child. On many of her Instagram posts, she can be seen going from one guy to another. They are buying her different things. Chief Keef has multiple kids with different baby mamas. Over the years, the rapper has had a number of problems when it came to child support. One of them filed a lawsuit for child support and won. She allegedly gave birth in 2011 when the rapper was just 15 years old. Based on the lawsuit, the rapper had to pay $2,600 a month. To top it all off, Keef also has to pay $500 for daycare expenses and $10,400 for missed child support payments. Even though Keef is often seen with lots of cash in his pockets, he didn't pay child support. However, Keef has only paid $1,900 so far. The woman says she can't support herself without his payments and needs him to start paying immediately. Remember, this is just one out of his multiple baby mamas. What about the rest? Another one of his baby mamas, a woman in her 40s, said that Chief Keef should be sent to jail for not paying any child support for their daughter since the moment she was born. Well, at the rate he is going, he should be careful not to end up bankrupt. But this is also affecting the way people view black women in general. In America, there is a common stereotype that black women are arrogant, loud, argumentative, and disrespectful. While this is the furthest thing from the truth for the majority of black women, there are many black women who copy someone who portrays these characteristics, especially female rappers and celebrities. They try to mimic this angry mama behavior. In the past, a lot of white women complained about the sexuality of black women, them stealing their men. Over the years, we've seen many stereotypes shift and change, but the only thing that has stayed the same was the stereotypical image of the angry mama. The black community has been through so much, and now, where we've come to a stage where a lot of black people can thrive and succeed, we still see the destruction of the family concept. Do you see all these baby mama wars? This is something that happens a lot, and it is very real. The lashing out, the drama, the chaos. Whenever you share your partner with different people, there will be a lot of problems. These are the
come to me.
Yeah, we see this all day in the African American community.
problems. These are the kinds of problems that everyone is not equipped to deal with. The resentment, jealousy, and anger turn into everyday life. Instead, we should be focusing on the kids. There are a lot of times when children are forced to choose between their parents. At other times, the mother or father will promote themselves to look like the better option. Then, when the child is brought into the mix, there is much bickering. We have all these baby mothers going back and forth fighting for their baby father's attention, fighting for the money and the rights of the child, or hating all the other baby mamas involved. No matter how much money the child has, if every time the child comes home and it is a war zone, the child will never get the emotional support, love, and affection they crave. Sometimes they will see their father tell their mother that they are done with the other girl, only to end up impregnating her again. This is creating wreckage and a ton of damage. Relationships in broken homes are some of the most physically and mentally exhausting to be in. At the end of the day, the mothers are left to care for all the children, while the fathers go on to make as many children as they possibly can. So, whose fault is it? Are these women being manipulated, or do they know what they're getting themselves into and willingly choose to do so? The point is not to demonize the black community. It is to talk about what's right. How is it okay to leave so many children behind, for the parents to throw shots at each other every chance they get? What lessons are we teaching these children? That it is okay to be at war with your partner. Women should go for any man who can provide, and men shouldn't care what they leave behind. It makes a lot of sense to blame one or the other, but in reality, children are the victims. It's a man's choice to have this many baby mamas, but it is a woman's choice too. Every broken home has a choice. It takes two to create life. In many, if not most of these cases, the women are making a conscious decision to have a child with someone who will not put a ring on their finger. Someone who doesn't want commitment, and they say it right from the start. Some of these women believe that the child can be some form of an indicator that the father will stay in their lives. Again, this is not to demonize single mothers. It is to understand that many of these choices come from the ego. Your ego says, yes, being a baby mama to a rapper feels good. I want the approval, a bigger title and a crown. I need people to respect me. I really need the most expensive things to show how formidable I can be. But ego lives on delusion. It feeds you lies. For example, it can create an exaggerated self-importance. A rapper's baby mama might think that she should come first because she gave birth to his first son. But that rapper is with 5 other women now. Yet her ego will make her believe that the rapper should make her a priority over any other situationships he has. Then baby mamas start to feel threatened by the new girlfriend. They think that this new one is trying to replace her and her child. She will get in the way of everything. So if the rapper starts to move on or get engaged, then the ex is most likely to start unnecessary drama. Her ego can't stand being out of the spotlight, so it creates conflict to keep herself at the center of attention. We can see a lot of these cases where the exes undermine the parent. They tell their child that their father doesn't care about them. He picks someone else, so the child would always get left behind. Exes spread these lies to maintain a sense of superiority and control. They want to stay relevant. When you think about the pick-me behavior or consider pride, then ask yourself how two completely incompatible people come together and make a conscious decision to make so many children and bring them up in unstable situations. You can see that their home is eventually going to be broken. We shouldn't completely dismiss the fact that raising a healthy child is best done when both parents are emotionally mature and willing to step up. Children don't need to be traumatized. They don't need to see emotional or physical abuse. Remember, all of these things can have serious consequences later in the child's life. But this isn't just a black people problem, so it is wrong and ignorant to classify it as such. Plenty of people of different races and colors have the same problem. The toxic culture of baby mamas is everywhere. It has become the norm. Owen Wilson has 3 children by 3 different women. Steven Tyler has 4 children with 3 separate women. Clint Eastwood has 8 children with 6 different women. People see marriage as more of a commitment than children. But the truth is, you can pick your spouse, but your kid can't pick their parent. You will hear a lot of people say, we don't need a piece of paper to show we love each other. But that piece of paper is there to give rights. As a wife, you are more guaranteed legally and financially. Married couples can qualify for higher tax deductions and credits than single filers. Then there are social security benefits, sharing costs, and so on. There's also life insurance. If something happens, God forbid, to the spouse, then the other partner can keep the house, cars, and bank accounts. Besides, when you are legally tied to someone you trust, it can be that much easier to build and share wealth. It is almost impossible to build a lot of funds if you are alone, getting paid minimum wage, and trying to take care of the kids all by yourself. Also, having married parents provides both the partners and their children with long-term stability. If you are lucky enough to find the right partner, you will always have a partner in crime, so to speak. You can share almost everything with each other, from dreams to bad experiences. Your spouse should always be there supporting you and looking out for you every step of the way. Then there is the psychological aspect. Being in a stable and healthy marriage can be better for the child's psyche. Ever heard the saying, it takes a village to raise a child? It comes from an African proverb, and it makes so much sense because it is very true. To take care of a child, you need an entire support system, a safe and healthy environment where your child can flourish and develop. They can realize their hopes and dreams. A good marriage not only alleviates the economic pressures, but also gives the children a stable foundation. Now, I do understand why some people don't want to get married and have the government in their business, but we can at least start raising our children in the same household. That's a good start. But a baby mama doesn't have that security. She doesn't have that financial or emotional stability. The only thing that connects her to her partner or ex is the child. That's it. This is why it's incredibly important to be mindful of who you have children with, and choosing to do it with someone who already has impregnated a ton of women and doesn't take care of any of his children. That in itself is a recipe for disaster. He may be a famous rapper now, but what happens 10 years from now, 20 years, when the child is all grown up without ever having a father figure? Would that child care that their dad used to be famous in the music industry? Maybe, maybe not. There are a lot of children who are raised to value materialism above all else, but the trauma will still be there. The abandonment issues will still be there. The anxiety, depression, withdrawal, fear of rejection, they are not going anywhere. A lot of these children end up in destructive relationships because they feel insecure and emotionally needy. They always look for that perfect father fantasy that they have in their mind. So they are often incapable of accepting anything else. It is very difficult for these children to start fresh and learn to trust somebody or set boundaries. In the United States, there are millions of women who are raising their children alone. The rates are much higher within the black community. The question is, do you want to be another statistic and get on board the hype train to have a baby with a rapper, actor, or wealthy man? Or would you rather find someone who loves you and wants to raise a kid in a welcoming household? Every woman and man deserves to be loved and respected. We all deserve to be happy. And just because someone has a higher net worth, it doesn't mean they will be good for the kids. Children also want love, attention, affection, and time. So what we do need is to encourage all young women and men to respect themselves, focus on their education, and wait for the right time to find their partner. But if you don't want to get conventionally married, that's also okay. There are a lot of people who are not married, but they stay together because they know how to make it work. They know how to be healthy. If you are young and single, it is important to work on your skills and try to heal from past trauma as much as possible. This way, you can build a healthy environment, not just for people around you, but for yourself as well. What do you think is important when it comes to having kids? Do you think marriage helps, or is it just a trap? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. The video on the screen shares exactly how the US government destroyed black families back in the day. It is a must-watch if you haven't seen it yet. Click on it now. We'll see you over there.
I mean, peoples, some peoples. You gotta wake up, peoples. You most definitely gotta wake up. Can't play the blame game and, you know what I mean, looking for a way out, point the finger at this person. You know what I mean? We gotta do better, y'all.
Look at what
We gotta do better.
they value and look at their budget and what they're proposing. Romney wants to he said in the first 100 days, he's going to let the big banks once again write their own rules. Unchain Wall Street. They're going to put you all back in chains.